Hey, it's Ray. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As my subscribers know, I love movies. And if you don't know or you're new here, welcome and happy Halloween. Today we will be reviewing Sam Raimi's horror classic, Drag Me to Hell. Released to theaters in 2009, stars Justin Long, Alison Lohman, Dilip Rao, and Lorna Raver. Before we get started, guys, if you like my content, be sure to like the video, comment down below if you've seen Drag Me to Hell and what you think about it. Let's get into it. The movie follows seemingly sweet and smiley banker Christine, who accidentally screws an old gypsy woman out of her house that she's lived in for like 30 generations and pays the ultimate price for her mistake. Like most films in the horror genre, the movie begins with a bang. A Hispanic family in Pasadena takes their young son to a shaman, Mrs. Sean Sandina, for help after he steals a necklace off a gypsy wagon. But the parents said when they tried to give it back, they wouldn't accept it. They also say their son has been seeing and hearing things for the past 3 days, says something's coming for him. When they take him inside, he is profusely sweating and seeing shadows of the demons on the ceiling. The group tries to pray it out, but something comes for him all right. He tries to run, but it catches up with him, sending the boy over the ledge, falling to the ground below. The ground breaking and fire coming up. Finally, a hand grabs the boy, dragging him to you-know-where. Mrs. Sean Sandina, unable to look away from the ground, promising to face the creature again. Certainly a bang. Some years later, we meet our main character, Christine, the sweetest banker on her way to work, practicing the English language. She has an accent from the Midwest. Her day at work consists of kissing up to the boss, Mr. Jacks, who informs her he's looking at her for an assistant manager's promotion, but also considering her rival, Stu. She's then basically forced into getting both of them lunch after Stu barges in on their conversation. She's obviously putting in an effort to come off as calm and collected. As her boss has just informed her, she has something to work for. I sure hope nothing messes this up for her. When she goes to visit her boyfriend Clay at lunch, although she overhears the mother on the phone with him pimping out a different woman to him, calling Christine a sweet girl from the farm, really bashing her and also recommending someone else. Ugh. We also learn that Clay has a coin collection, stuffing a rare coin Christine found while at work into a plain white envelope. Christine goes back to work and of course gets shit from Stu about his lunch, saying she got him mayo when he asked for no mayo. So stupid. But her day is just getting started, however, when a customer, Mrs. Gunnish, finally takes a seat at her desk. Tapping her nails away on the desk, the sound filling up Christine's ears. She's sweet enough though. Papers in hand and a speech prepped, she asks for an extension on her loan. Otherwise, she loses her house that day. The contractor's already starting the process of taking her things, personal things, she mentions. We also learn she is sick. This is why she hasn't paid. The illness taking sight in one of her eyes, causing her to have 2 different colored eyes. Christine immediately tries to tell Mrs. Gunnish that her boss wouldn't allow it. But Gunnish is shocked. She pleads with Christine to at least try. So she goes to double check with Mr. Jacks, Mrs. Gunnish making herself comfortable, as she actually takes her teeth out and puts them on Christine's desk. Handkerchief in hand, she can't seem to stop coughing and hacking shit up. Mr. Jacks tells Christine it's her choice. He trusts her to do the right thing. Christine looking over at Stu again, seeing him work, and decides to side with the bank, telling Mrs. Gunnish an extension is out of the question. She is begged and begged by the poor woman. She tries to help the lady, but ultimately calls for security while Mrs. Gunnish falls forward. In even more shock, Mrs. Gunnish says, "I beg you, and you shame me?" Turning around just before security escorts her out and lunges at Christine. Christine jumping back, terrified, before they grab her and take her out of the building. You can tell she feels somewhat bad, but has a promotion in mind, so she doesn't budge. And this is when the whole thing starts. You guys, she couldn't just give Mrs. Gunnish a 3rd extension on her home. Who cares? Now you're gonna get cursed. Mr. Jacks letting her know that of course she is now at the top of the assistant manager's jobless position. Stu overhearing the whole thing. That night after work, Christine walks alone to her car. After hearing coughing from a distance, we see a handkerchief floating by her window towards the rear of the car, and then Mrs. Gunnish creepily chilling in the back seat. "You shame me," she says. She tries to whisper some other stuff into Christine's ear, but Christine isn't having it and immediately busts into action, The two on a full-on Sam Raimi directed fight, taking a stapler to the old woman's face, not to mention an elbow to the face, before Ganesh tries choking Christine out. Christine's last resort is crashing the car, sending the old woman to the front seat and her teeth falling out her mouth. She tries to eat Christine's face at this point and some gunk falls out her mouth. It's so disgusting, but Christine gets her off and out of the car finally, calling her an old bitch while she does so. But this is not your typical old lady, you guys. And despite her little demeanor, she seems to have some dark, magical powers. She takes a button from Christine's coat. Mrs. Ganesh then whispers some sort of spell, breathes on the button while holding it up. And a curse is a curse. While giving it back to Christine, she remarks, "Soon it will be you who comes begging to me." Christine, in a foggy haze, she comes to and Mrs. Ganesh is gone. Clay, being skeptic, thinking Christine will feel better with some good old rest. But she doesn't let it go, contemplating if she actually could have gotten Mrs. Ganesh a third extension. Passing by a psychic shop, she gets the urge to go inside. We meet the psychic named Ram. Ram notices Christine's missing button on her coat immediately. Christine's agreeing the old woman did in fact do something with the button, but she wasn't quite sure. Digging further, he pauses and things in the room start moving by themselves. He stares and holds her hand intently before he sees something. A yellow-eyed demon pop up and nearly knock him out. Ram, falling back and obviously shaken up, asks Christine and Clay to leave immediately, coming to the conclusion that someone's cursed her. They go back to Christine's that night, Clay having to run and meet the guy back at Christine's car, leaving her alone for a few. Clay wasn't there, of course, for the attack. He is not present or fully aware of the hauntings that are after Christine. While at home, we learn Christine used to be more plump, her trashing an old photo of herself. We start getting the vibe she's insecure and may not even be showing the full, real Christine, as we've seen her rehearsing the English language in the car on her way to work, and she also has no problem with violence despite her sweet exterior. That night while Clay is gone, she hears some loud-ass gate and a snarling. Next, a shadow runs through her house, busts open the windows, and clattering through the pots and pans. It ends up knocking Christine out completely, leaving her with a busted lip. Clay comes home and calls the doctor to calm her nerves, still thinking she's just shooken up for the most part, and says if anyone attacked her, it was the old woman with the lights off, obviously. He suggests a getaway to their parents' cabin that weekend. It delights Christine, her lighting up at the suggestion. While they're sleeping, we see a fly work its way into Christine's mouth and down her throat, all the way to her stomach. It's like buzz. She wakes up choking, and right beside her is Mrs. Ganesh, looking zombified, in her bed next to her out of nowhere, getting on top of Christine and puking out some dark, wormy stuff all over her face. But don't worry, it was just a dream. Clay dropping her off at work that morning, reminding her not to piss off any old ladies, with a worried look on his face. Stu gives her shit, of course, and then we see she hallucinates seeing Mrs. Ganesh's hand tapping on the desk as she did the day before. It sends Christine into a freak out, yelling in Stu's face, unfortunately getting everyone's attention, including that of Mr. Jax, her boss. Christine randomly starts bleeding profusely out of her nose, enough blood to cover Mr. Jax. She denies his help and runs out the building, Stu stealing her work off her desk when everyone's distracted. What a douche. Mrs. Ganesh being 100% correct in her message to Christine. Next thing we see is Christine rushing to her house to beg for forgiveness, of course, in the middle of her funeral at that. She easily shifts the blame on the bank for taking Mrs. Ganesh's house, explaining that she just works there. But not only does her plan not work, she literally knocks over Mrs. Ganesh's dead carcass in front of everybody. Ganesh pulling her signature move by now, puking all over Christine. Yeah, Christine's screwed. She goes back to Ram and learns the whole deal, that she's the owner of the cursed object, so the demon called the Lamia will come for her in 3 days, whether she likes it or not. Ram, trying to help Christine, tells her that sometimes sacrifices will deter the evil from going after you. Oh boy. Back at home, Christine is attacked by the demon for a second time. After hearing the familiar gate creak and voice whisper, she runs up the stairs where we hear the clack of the demon's footsteps following her. She tries to call for help, but Clay is busy at work, Mrs. Ganesh's face popping up on her phone and the demon popping up in the window. It scares Christine and lifts her up into the air, spinning and throwing her to the other side of the room. The demon isn't letting her go anytime soon, no matter what she does. And if anything, it's only getting stronger. In a desperate attempt to offer a sacrifice, she does decide to kill her cat. After this, the music gets all happy and it's almost like the demon is gone for Christine. In fact, that's what Christine thinks. Her in better moods and excited for dinner at Clay's tonight. That night at his parents', the cat gets brought up. Christine lying that she doesn't actually know where the cat is, remarking, well, cats come and they go, to her boyfriend. It's time to eat and things start well. Christine impressing Clay's parents with her talk of how awesome she is at her job. Ganesh's eyeball all of a sudden pops up into her dessert. We knew that wouldn't last long. All of a sudden, Christine keeps hearing voices from the walls growing louder and louder until they're all she can hear, causing her to freak out in front of everybody and go into a frenzy. It looks like despite her attempt to sacrifice her cat, this demon is still coming after her. She runs to Ram, breaking his stuff, yelling at him because killing the cat didn't work. Finally, he tells her he knows someone who deals with dark forces like the one haunting her, but it's going to cost a lot of money and there are no guarantees. To try to get the money, Christine gets dolled up and continues her lying, going to Mr. Jacks, telling him that one of her family members is sick and she needs an advance for the assistant manager's position to help them get treatment. Mr. Jacks unfortunately telling her that not only did her work deal fall through, but that Stu is actually getting the promotion, leaving Christine to rush home to gather what she can for the money to go see the shaman with Ram. It ends up not being enough money, the stuff she pawns, but Clay ends up coming through, giving Christine the rest of the money, saying he is on her side, still super in love with her and willing to help her with what's been going on. We learn that despite everything going on, how Clay is skeptic in all this and how she failed with his parents at dinner, he's still on her side, so it's still kind of sweet of him. Christine and Ram finally go to the median from the beginning of the film, you guys, Sean Sandina, for help as the little boy did 40 years prior. It's not that easy though. During their seance, the demon playing enough tricks and spooks on the group to throw off their whole operation and distract them from slaughtering the goat once the demon entered its body, which was their plan. The scene, you guys, is actually quite silly and includes a dance number by the demon. He calls Christine a whore, throws up her dead cat, and actually tries to eat out her soul right then and there before it's banished by shaman Sean Sandina. This act of courage taking up all her strength and unfortunately killing the girl, the woman, the shaman from the beginning. She's dead now. It's a tragic scene, and when it dies down, Christine is focused on her own issues, asking Ram if she is free. Ram telling her that it was all a fail and the Lamia will come for the owner of the cursed object unless, of course, you are not the owner, suggesting she give the button to someone else. Christine only wondering why he didn't just tell her this to begin with. He warns her it is because whoever she gives that button to will burn in hell for eternity. He puts the button in a white envelope and hands it back to Christine. She is clear on the plan, and this is her very last chance before her 3 days are up. She and Clay ride home. She mentions they have to part ways for a while she goes to do something. Before Christine gets out of the car, though, she momentarily loses her envelope with the button in it and panics. Shuffling through papers on the floor, she finally finds the envelope. Clay leaves and she promises to meet him in the morning at the train station 7:30 sharp, and that things will be way better from here on out. She genuinely still believes she has a chance. She goes to this local diner. She first threatens a rude waitress with the envelope as a tip. Then she sees an elderly sick man and contemplates him, but finally decides on Stu, calling him to meet her at the diner with the premise that she's going to call and tell Mr. Jacks he stole her work if he doesn't show up. Stu comes in a hot mess, worried he is going to lose his job and that Christine is going to tell on him. She cannot bring herself to gift him the button though, and tells him to leave, him thanking her and leaving. Going to Ram for the last time in the film, she asks if she can give the button to a dead person. A Mrs. Ganesh, perhaps? He said it can work, she just needs to make an official gift of the button. She promises one better, literally going to the old woman's grave, digging her up, and stuffing the envelope down her throat. Muddy and violent, Christine finally says her goodbyes to Mrs. Ganesh. The next morning, everything is looking up. Christine is shown in a bright light. She's joyous. She's getting ready for her trip. She also receives a voicemail from Mr. Jacks about how Stu screwed up in front of him, getting fired, and of course leaving the assistant manager's job waiting for her Monday morning. She arrives at the train station to meet Clay, stops for a brand new coat, Anne tells Clay the truth about it being her final decision to put Mrs. Gunnish out of her home. She admits to Clay that it was wrong of her and for the first time comes off genuine in the movie. However, it is way too late. Clay tells her she has a kind heart and asks about the new coat. Christine saying she got rid of the old one and never wants to see it again. Him saying that is really too bad considering he found the button from it that she left in his car the previous night, holding up the cursed button. Christine frozen with shock. Clay continues explaining it must have gotten mixed up and she must have taken the coin she gave him in the beginning of the film. All of this meaning that it was not the button that she gifted to Mrs. Gunnish, but Clay's coin. The demon coming to get her makes its final appearance right then and there, coming up from the ground as Christine slowly backs away from Clay. Falling onto the tracks, a hand coming up from the fiery, breaking pavement, grabbing Christine and dragging her down to you know where. Oh, so Christine is just donezo, you guys. No matter what she did, or what she didn't do rather, she lied a lot. She just went around lying, yelling at people, breaking up 30 generations of Elise. The first time I saw this movie, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel bad for this girl. But watching it for this review, I'm like, you're a shitty person, girl. I guess you wouldn't know till you're in it. Lastly, for the score on this movie, out of 10, I will give Drag Me to Hell a 6.8. You guys, thank you so much for watching. You guys have no idea how much I love movies and want to get you my recaps. Thank you for sticking around for another recap with Ray. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Again, it would mean the absolute world to me. Like and comment the video. Comment below if you've seen this movie, what you thought about it, and what I should review next. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful Halloween. Stay safe and get lots of candy. See you later.